Hello everyone, my name's DrLauren-Jane. I'm a junior doctor. I've just finished F1. I do have a young son, so I wanted to talk about what F1's been like for me with a child. So a little about us. My son is 7, so he's probably quite a bit older than any child that you might have. I'm assuming that most people have got slightly younger children, so that will affect kind of how things have been for us. I'm separated from his father, so he goes every other weekend, and I think that has made that this year both more difficult and less difficult for me. So the rotations that I've done are cardiac surgery, haematology with general medical on-calls, and psychiatry. And I would say when you are choosing your placements to think very carefully about the type of placements that you choose, because it really does make a difference to have a community placement breaking up those months and months of hospital medicine. So when I was on cardiac surgery, my rota was 7:30 until 5 every day with on-calls on top. And I actually found that quite manageable from a parenting point of view, because you are doing a solid 48 every week. I would get up before he woke up, and then I'd be back for what was really a reasonable time. And because you're already hitting that 48-hour limit, if you've got an on-call, they tend to give you days off in the week to make up for that. Otherwise, you're not going to be compliant. So if you're working the weekend, you'll find that you do perhaps Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and have Thursday, Friday off, and then work Saturday, Sunday, which if you've got young children, it's fantastic because you still get that weekend, especially if they're not at school. For me, that was slightly more problematic because obviously he would be at school on that Thursday, Friday. So if I was working a weekend when he was supposed to be with me, not at his father's, that would mean that I would go almost a month without seeing him, which was quite stressful at times. It was really stressful. I mean, luckily that didn't really happen. I don't know whether it was just luck of the draw, and I'll find that changes as I go along. But actually I haven't worked many weekends with him here at all. It's been very, very manageable, especially on cardiac surgery. Haematology I found a bit more difficult because the hours were 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. So on-calls tended to be in addition to your standard working week. So for example, if you're working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and you're working the weekend, you will just go through it as a 7-day stretch, which means that you can't really claw back that time. And I found that having that extra time in the morning, so obviously I started at 8, not 7:30, made no difference to the amount of time I could spend with my child, really, because no, who's got time in the morning? You're just like getting ready, or, you know, everyone's rushing around. That's not good quality time with your child. So for me, it worked much better to have a surgical placement and start early, completely miss him in the morning, but claw back those days on-calls. That worked really well for us. In terms of my rota for both cardiac surgery and haematology, there were times where, not in cardiac surgery so much, but in haematology, especially around January, February of this year, where I was just completely despairing. There were a couple of weeks, only a few, there were about 3 weeks where I felt like I never left the hospital, and it was really, really damaging for those few weeks. But for the most part, I have to say, it's actually not been terrible. I haven't felt like I've missed loads of time. I felt like I've been here. If you're on nights, obviously you can take them to school in the morning, you can spend time with them when you're not sleeping. I can't sleep in the day anyway, so for the most part, if I've done a night shift, I will see him in the morning, potentially walk him to school, come back, sleep solidly until it's time to pick him up from after school club around 4:30, and then I'll have until bedtime spent with him, and then I'll still manage to do a full 12-hour shift. So I actually find that nights sometimes are really helpful to being able to spend time with school-aged children. In terms of my final placement, that was psychiatry. That was 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. Most F1s on psych don't do on-calls at all because you can't do 5-2s, so it's pointless for you to do an on-call. I did have to do 4 weekend days over 4 months, but it was completely manageable. And I would say if you're about to change your placements, consider a community placement with limited on-calls, because you might well need that break. And also consider the placement of where you want that break to be. So for me, it worked really well to do cardiac surgery, haematology, and then to finish and look forward to those 4 months of no on-calls. But if you feel that perhaps you're really going to struggle with those hours, perhaps put your psychiatry or your whatever your community placement is in the middle. So do your first one, put it over Christmas, because then you've only ever got kind of 4 months to get through where you're doing really long hours. like I said, I have to say, looking back, it's been really manageable. I thought it would be harder than it was. I've been able to attend like his school plays, his nativities. I've been to parents' evening. I've been to, I took the time off for sports day. They did rain it off, but if it was on, I would have been there. So I feel that actually I didn't miss his birthday. I didn't miss Christmas. I did work New Year's Eve on the night shift, but you know, you can't have everything. You are going to be at work sometimes. But I have to say, when I was pre-F1, I was really concerned about how the hours were going to affect my son. And actually, I felt that I'm here most of the time. For the majority, you know, I'm home for about 5:30 every day. I do, you know, there are on-calls, there are nights where you will work until 8 or 9, but they're quite rare. And if you can swap with people as well, you can, you know, move them to a time where you know that your child is going to be doing something else, especially if they're older. So yeah, it's been really fine. So I did choose to do my F1 full time. I didn't want to stretch foundation years over 4 years, so I chose to do it full time, and I actually haven't regretted that at all. That's a decision that I'm really glad that I took. So I think what I'd like to do in future is I'd like to go to 80 or 60%, but on the foundation program it's 100 or 50, and I really want to just get foundation out of the way, so that's why I went for full time. But actually, after I finish F2, I'm going to go to 80 or 60, which I think will be much better. And I think the fact that I thought of foundation as being a very short-term placement, so these hours aren't forever, and that's what got me through. So when I was working long shifts, I would think, do you know what, I'm doing this for 2 years and then I'm done, and I'm not going to go and not be 80 or 60%, because that's kind of the deal that I've made with myself about parenting. I want to be able to be here. I don't want to be at work all the time. And whilst I haven't felt like that during F1, I would like to work less hours than I do now. 50 hours a week is still quite a lot. So yeah, I'm going to go to 80 or 60. But if you're someone who's thinking about going full-time for foundation, it's completely doable. What I will say is, obviously, my son was away for some of those weekends. So if I worked a weekend where he was gone, that really didn't matter to me. I didn't work loads of weekends, I have to say. I usually do about 4, it must be less than that. I usually do about 3 to 4 weekends in a 4-month block. And 1 or 2 of those might actually be your night shifts. So you'll probably get 4 sets of nights, 4 sets of weekends. But some of those nights might be weekends, if that makes sense. So you might only end up doing like 6 or 7 overall. So yeah, I found it completely manageable. I will say that everyone's experience is different. So you will have different placements than me in a different hospital, and you're a different person. So I do know people who have done exactly the same jobs as me within a similar time period, who've had a very different experience than I have. I've enjoyed my F1, I've really loved it. There's been very different reactions to the same placements as I've experienced. So my experience won't necessarily be your experience. But I think the main things just to do are just always make sure that, if you're really worried about it, try and swap some shifts. Be reassured that it is only 2 years. You can get through the 2 years and then go to 80 or 60, whatever suits you for whatever your reasons or lifestyle are. I'm not sure about whether you can drop down to 50% once you started at 100%. I think you probably would be able to, because I imagine they want to keep doctors. So one of the things that I did initially consider was that I'd perhaps do F1 full time and then drop down to doing F2 at 50%, because then it's only over 3 years and you've kind of got rid of that really first shaky year. But actually, I felt that I can probably crack through F2. I do have a community placement this year as well, which will be helpful. Do make sure you still make time for yourself, because I think that's the thing, is that I do feel a lot of pressure as a working mother, especially with the amount of hours that I work, is that if I'm not at work, I'm 100% for my child, and that is the way it works. So if he's here, I don't tend to take any free time for myself. So that becomes very difficult to manage things that I need to do for my own mental health, like doing yoga, doing exercise, resting, reading, seeing friends. So it can be quite a difficult balance to be able to fit in work, because obviously your child is your first priority, but at the same time you can't just not turn up to work. So work is a very big priority. So you know, you do the work stuff with the time that's left, you see and love your child, and then when your child's in bed or is somewhere else, that's the time that is for yourself. And it is very difficult to kind of manage that balance, especially if you want to do out of work things like extracurricular stuff like I do, like audits and presentations and studying for college exams. It can be really difficult to fit that in, and I think I have achieved that balance. I'd like to go swimming and things after work, but I just can't fit it in with the childcare and stuff like that. So you can't have everything, but as a first year, I have to say it's been fine, it's been manageable. There have been some tears, mine, along the way, but mostly I think that's a lot to do with mum guilt and thinking when I'm at work, I think, do you know what, I should be with my child who's off today, it's the summer holidays. And then when I'm here, sometimes I'm thinking, and I did this a lot as a med student, maybe I should be studying, maybe I should be doing other things. And you can find yourself being very not present in both of those situations. And it's really important just to try and, for me, I just think, right, I'm at work, I think about work. Do not be stressed about anything else because I am at work. And when I'm at home, I try and switch off. You know, I'm a mum now, I'm not a doctor. The final thing to mention is holidays. So for me, it was really difficult to get my holidays in my first block. I think if you've got school-age children like me, in theory, you should find that getting your school holidays should be quite fine, much more easy than it will be as you go along. Because not a lot of F1s have children, and even less F1s have children that are in school. So there's not a huge demand for people who want those very kind of sought after weeks that are, you know, in the school holidays, October holidays, all of that stuff. So that should be relatively easy for you to get those. My first attachment was really difficult for taking any kind of leave, and I have to say it did take me about 8 months to get any leave off in the school holidays, and I had to fight really hard for that, and that was really difficult. So it can be things like that that really get to you. And I do remember being in December of 2018 and being told that I couldn't have this holiday, I couldn't have that holiday, and just thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm working all of these hours. I'm, I think, a really good doctor. I'm not taking sickness absence, and all I want is to be able to take my holidays when my child is available. And I wasn't always able to do that in the first part of that year, and it was really, really frustrating. Because I think that's what gets you through the long weeks, is thinking, do you know what, in 4 weeks we're off, we're going to have a week together. And that was not always easy, but it has been easier in haematology, and in psychiatry it was completely fine. So one of the questions to ask when you are trying to pick your rotations is how many doctors are on that speciality. Because for me in cardiac surgery, there was me and an F2, and that was it. And because we both did really heavy on-calls, if he was at work, I was on call, and if I was at work, he was on call. So you find that you can only take holidays in, you know, 3 very narrow weeks of 4 months, basically, where he's available to cover you. And that makes it really difficult if you've got a partner who also needs to take their time off, or if you want to be in school holidays. So it's something to consider when you are looking at your rotations, is how easy is it going to be for me to take time off, because it's important for yourself to be able to take that time when it's meaningful to you, not when the hospital says you can take it. So that was my final point. These are just really my reflections, a collection of thoughts, a narrative of how I found F1. If you do have any specific comments for me about how my F1 year has gone, how I've managed, please leave me a comment, or you can find me on Instagram. The links are all in the profile. I hope this has been useful to you. Good luck in the future. Thanks a lot. Bye.